Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Launch. My name is Matt Bowersox, and once again, I'm joined by Ross McLean, Director of the Master of Arts in Strategic Design at Furman University, and Hank Richardson, the Director and Design Coach at Miami Ad School at Portfolio Center Atlanta. Today, we have a really special guest. Joining us is Mary Elizabeth Morse, a Furman graduate and current art director at BrightHouse. Welcome, Mary Elizabeth. Welcome so much to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem. So what we wanted to talk about a little bit about today is a little bit about your journey from being a student at Furman, your journey into this role currently that you're in as art director. I'm sure this has been kind of a ride for you, coming from undergraduate to kind of a post-baccalaureate program and then now onto a career. So could you kind of just describe what kind of process you went to, and did you see yourself ever being an art director before you graduated?
Absolutely not. I didn't even know that was a job or a career really until I met Ross in my senior year. I was a history major at Furman. My dream was to work at the Smithsonian, to work in the archives, be a curator. I had a lot of internships in that area when I was at Furman and got to experience a bunch of different areas of the museum world. And then realized it was a bit lonely in the basement of these museums to be sitting by myself. And I really loved being creative and collaborating with people, and that kind of drew me out more. And so I got to senior year, realized that where I had been going in life was the wrong direction, had some extra credits to fill, and I took some design classes with Ross, and just really started to love what I could create and what I could envision in my head and then bring to life in these classes. And it just felt really fulfilling on so many different levels. And I started to freak out like most seniors do about what do you do post-graduation? Where do I go? Help me find, my way. And Ross mentioned it was Portfolio Center at the time, and now Miami Ad School Portfolio Center. And he said, you're from Atlanta. This is an awesome program. We've had students go there for years and have done incredible things, and just kind of started to seed, all these different opportunities and careers and positions that you could hold in this design world. And I just said, I'm not ready for the world. I'm ready to continue learning. And so I moved back to Atlanta and moved in with my parents, which made them real happy. And I got to meet Hank and go to school for 2 more years. And so that's kind of what started my trajectory towards design and then ultimately now art direction.
So Hank tells a pretty cool story about how you first approached him. Hank, could you tell that story to us again?
Yeah, I so remember the first time I met Mary Elizabeth was at Furman, and she came up after a presentation and said, what can a art history major do with design? And all I could think was, like, where do I begin? I knew the answer was yes, but it wasn't going to satisfy her at the moment. So there was going to be a lot more conversation around it. And it became, and the more you got to know Mary Elizabeth, you realized that the sense of ethos and pathos was all rolled into one person, and that there was going to be a lot of opportunity in a lot of different ways. And it's absolutely amazing, honestly, so amazing to see that today that she works for a company that is about that purpose-driven work out there in the world.
So Mary Elizabeth, what was it about design specifically that drew you to the field, drew you in?
I think so often being creative and thinking I can be a graphic designer is this idea to make things beautiful. And yes, that's true. But what I learned in school, in design school, was that we're not just cake decorators. We don't just put icing on the cake and make it beautiful. We're baked in. We shape and form and can make new things that have an impact in the world. And so I think it's seeing the way that a creative mind, as ADD as I am, can create something that has a bigger impact in the world and can shape behaviors, that can change cultures, that can inform and improve the way we live every day, and realizing that that is the role that design can have in the world. That's so powerful and remarkable. And I never thought I could have that role or that power, I guess. I remember one of the first speakers at Miami Ad School was someone from IDEO. And I never heard of IDEO, but it's this huge firm, and and they talked about how there was a bank somewhere in South America that was having problems gaining their customers' trust. They were having people store their money in the floorboards of their homes rather than save their money in a bank. And so they brought in a design firm to address the situation and figure out how do you convince people to come into the bank. And it was redesigning the space to where, you know, the countertops were lower, so people, it didn't feel like a wall, it didn't feel like a barrier. It was more of a conversational space for people to come in and talk to people in the bank, and places for people to sit with pamphlets and read, so they felt more comfortable and trusting of the bank. And ultimately that improved the bank's business to now they're one of the biggest banks, I think, in South America. And that was because of a design firm and design thinking. And I just, that like blew my mind that like design and business and behavior could be all connected. And I don't know, just the power that creative thinking can have in the world was just something that I'd never even imagined or thought about. And so I think
that's
all of that helped.
yeah, I think that's one thing a lot of people don't quite get when they see when they consider pursuing a career as a designer. I don't think they often think, oh, I can change the world. You know, they think maybe it's just playing around with Photoshop. And I think that's something that that's a story we're trying to tell. And I really appreciate you kind of sharing your side to that. Ross, when we were chatting earlier, you had said you wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how the MASD at Furman kind of helps students accomplish this. Could you kind of talk a little bit about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Mary Elizabeth in her trajectory, you know, is dead on why we finally began to say, you know, we really need to begin to create an intentional master's program that blends the things that we're doing in the liberal arts, specifically through leadership and management, and couple that with this creative professional track. And the type of student that usually gravitates towards us is just like Mary Elizabeth in the sense that, you know, they stumble upon us and they see how it all connects, and they're very driven, and they're very purpose driven, and they've got these vast variety of experiences, and they don't know how to take all those, we call them soft skills, and translate them into something bigger. And, you know, one of the things that really excites me is that when we can kind of flip that switch on them about the creative potential that lies within them, and how it connects with the overall, you know, world. And so, you know, that's basically at the core. And I love the way that she talks about what she does for a living. It's like how design is baked in. And that's really what we're doing, is baking in within the student and their pathway this idea of leadership through creativity, right? And so the master's program is baking that in, right, and polishing that and putting it on trajectory. And what really gets me, I know that Hank and I can go on. I mean, he and I talk probably twice a day, and we'll go into great, you know, lengthy conversations, and to the point where we just gotta go. I gotta go. You know, we just gotta hang up. And we talk about this untapped potential that we have begun to craft. And what's even more exciting is the success that we've had with these companies that want to come to us, is that now Mary Elizabeth is in a space that, you know, we have an advisory council, and she's in a place that she's in a constant loop. And even though as busy she is, you know, she's always allowed a space to, one, talk to students that are interested in pursuing what she does, and two, she's counseling us, right? Keeping what we're doing real and keeping it on point, because it's a profession that does change, but at its core is very human-centered and driven. So, you know, I just can't tell you that how exciting it is to be able to have something that is actually connecting and resonating, and is becoming quite successful in that regard. So, yeah.
So Mary Elizabeth, I got a question for you. You're obviously kind of a forerunner for what our students are currently experiencing in the MASD program now. Could you talk a little bit about, like, if you had some advice to give students who are considering pursuing this field and pursuing being an art director like yourself for an established company, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would like to give to somebody who's considering this as a career path?
So I'll kind of go on like advice based on your career trajectory. So
Okay.
first, like when you're in school, I think you're presented with so many different areas and so many different opportunities, and you're taught so many different things. It's a lot to take in, but it's exciting, and take it all in. But I think you'll find there's things that you're really good at naturally, and then there's things you love, and then there's things you're not good at, and it's kind of hard to like find your way through everything that you're gonna be taught and experience. For me, I think what I would advise is, even if you're not skilled at something but you love it, like pursue that with everything you have. Like, just because you're maybe like really good at drawing in Photoshop, like doesn't necessarily mean that's all you should do. Like if you really love design thinking and human-centered design, and maybe something around branding, but you're not the best at it, like lean in to learning as much as you can while you're in school to really strengthen those muscles, and pursue what you love, maybe what's not like your strongest muscle when you first go into the program. Like for me, I didn't have the best knowledge of the Adobe suite. I didn't know all the Photoshop skills or Illustrator skills. And it was kind of hard for me to figure out what I loved. But once I kind of figured out I love purpose design, and therefore I need to learn all these programs, like I really leaned into it. And so it's sometimes just easy to go with what you're good at, and follow that versus maybe what you really in the heart drawn to. So it's probably not the best way to say that, but the second one. Go ahead, Ross.
No, I just said yes. That's great.
Yeah, that's super. I would, back to your story a second ago, Mary Elizabeth, about IDEO. I've sort of forgotten that story a little bit, but it reminds me that story actually started in 1969, and it started at Stanford University, and when design thinking was adapted for business purposes and created into this company then called IDEO by a fellow by the name of David Kelly. But even before that, the research was actually being done, and in the early 1980s, really. But it really presented design thinking as a method for creative action, and we have come to a point now where purpose. This word purpose, we have probability that's driven our society one way, but if anything, in the current environment that we're in, we've learned that profit isn't purpose, it's a result. And to have purpose means that we do things that are of a real value. And Mary Elizabeth has always favored that aspect of what she has done. While she was a student, she and another student took on a project together at Cristo Rey High School here in Atlanta, and really taught young kids who were, their socioeconomic status wasn't where it could be, but they were given opportunity, and she really presented them with opportunity and defined purpose and a real value. And I think walked away from that project amazing.
Mary Elizabeth, you had given us a great number one. Let's jump to number two. What else do you got for advice?
So yeah, that would be my advice for when you're in school, is to kind of lean into what you love. When you're trying to figure out what to do after school, the advice I give probably way too often is, you're going to get everybody telling you what to do. I had parents, I had brothers, I had in-laws, brothers telling me what to do with my career. And it's really hard to have all those voices and to find your own voice and your own passion, I guess, and to figure out that next step, either post school or post design school for your first job. And so I say to students, list out your priorities, and be really honest with yourself. If your number one priority is to make a lot of money, that's great. Go for that. If a lot of students, I find their priority is geography. Hank was talking about my friend Ellie, she just wanted to be in New York, and that I think was her number one priority. And for different people, it's different priorities, but list them out, be honest with yourself as an individual, and then chase after your first priority. With your first job, you could probably get your first one, and just find peace and happiness with that. And then as you move up in your career, chase down those next couple priorities. but it's hard when you're trying to juggle everyone's expectations and hopes at once with that first career choice, and that's too much pressure to hold. So just listen to yourself and go with that first priority. And for me, my first priority, weirdly, I wrote, I just wanted to feel value and purpose. And I didn't know what that meant until I found my job, which is now with a purpose, a consultancy built around purpose. And I found that with my first job. And that's why I'm here after almost 3 years of working with them. I'm not going anywhere because it fulfills my personal priorities on so many levels. So that would be the other piece of advice. And then my third one, man, I had it ready to go.
That's good. 1 and 2 is awesome.
We can work with 2.
We can work with 2.
Yeah.
I had a really good third one.
Listen to Hank and Ross is the third one.
I regrettably say that to people on the phone. I always say, begrudgingly, I have to admit that Ross and Hank both I owe my career and my dream job to, because those people that were like, trust me, and you're like, I don't know, it's scary, it's the next step, I don't know, and they know best, and maybe that was something around my third piece.
Well, you know what? Something that you said, and Hank and I talk about this a lot with our students. He and I talk about it, in our daily conversations. But one of the things that we notice is that, to your point about, stretching yourselves, putting your head down and working really hard and lean into that passion and be very curious. And if you don't know something, then dig even deeper. And I think that a lot of times I don't know, students are afraid to be disciplined in that regard. I think sometimes they feel like it's going to just magically come to them in some way. And
yeah,
I love that you speak to just, the pain of being disciplined, right? I mean, of just, taking what you know or what you're comfortable with and then expanding upon that. So like if you're passionate about human-centered design, but you got to know certain other things in order to really fulfill that and to be, to feel greatness, right? Mm-hmm. And so you push yourself into those uncomfortable spaces, and it shouldn't come easy. It should be hard work. And yeah. And I do, appreciate you speaking to that. And it's an important lesson.
Yeah. I remember my third piece of advice now.
Yes.
Which is, now that I've picked my career, once you're in that career, I think never stop working for yourself. You will so often have people say, oh, you do design? Like, can you Photoshop this real quick? Like, yeah. My mom literally just sent me an email with Mother's Day gift. Photoshop this wedding photo for me. And she's my mom. I will do it for free. But we'll get that from coworkers, from people trying to plan a wedding. And I think at first it's easy to be like, yeah, I'll do it for free. And then so many projects later, you're like, I should value what I can create and what I can do, and just say, yeah, and here's my pricing. And I think it's scary to say the word freelance. I wouldn't consider it freelance. I would say it's valuing what I'm capable of doing and knowing that people will always ask for one-offs that generally will grow into something else. Don't back down from those opportunities, pursue them, because you never know where they can go, but also say, yes, and I have my company and here's the way I, handle this business, and find confidence in that. And don't be scared of that. I think again, this would be my advice, is never stop working for yourself. Never stop learning. Like what you were saying, Ross, if you love something, continue to pursue it. And that goes with business on the side. I think just as designers, people are always going to be asking for help and advice and for you to do something really quick. And that just so easily can grow out of control. But if you're set up for success where you're like, here are my rates, here's, how we're going to do it, you're going to be super successful. And you never know, it could grow into your own business if you just handle it right.
And Mary Elizabeth, one of the things, and I would like for you maybe to, speak to this, is that the way I see our graduate program is one big rehearsal mm-hmm. to get ready. And either you're going to take advantage of that stage and mm-hmm. Really dig in and really go through those rehearsals, or you're not. and I think we allow you to have that real world space in order to trial through that, and to get you ready. Is that kind of what
Speak a little bit about that, Mary Elizabeth, from your viewpoint, because you spent time 4 years as an undergrad at Furman, and then you came, but the rigor that was built into all of that is pretty amazing to ultimately drive you where you are.
Yeah, and I think about the time at Miami Ad School, and it's a time where you get out of the program what you put into it.
Right.
You have the structure, you have everything you need in front of you, you have the teachers who are there invested for you, you have seminar speakers who are coming to talk to you and inspire you, you have literally everything you need in front of you. But if you don't put the time in to grab hold of everything they're saying and trying to give you, you're not going to get out of it all that's possible. And I think while it is, like you're saying, a practice round for the real world, you have to be disciplined in showing up and taking the space to create and to really create something meaningful. You have, class times a week, you have so many hours to create. It's up to you to spend that time being disciplined on your own, to create, to think, to make something of it. But yeah, it's definitely what you put into it is what you get out of it. And that will hold true, not just in school, but in life. I mean, right now, as I'm working at home, it's very easy to roll out of bed before my first meeting, which may not be till 1 o'clock. But the discipline you learn in design school, kind of helps. And at Furman too. I mean, you know that you got to get up, you got to take advantage of the hours that you have in the day to do something meaningful. And so that's just a skill set for life, but it definitely starts to figure into your time when you're in design school, for sure.
And you being on the hiring end now, I mean, you can begin to see that, can't you, in the books and the individual? I mean, you can see the ones that have done the work and are ready. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the time you take at the beginning, when I first started in my job, I mean, I think about how long it used to take me to do something originally to now I'm so much faster. I'm so much quicker. I mean, that's billable hours now, which matters. And so it's kind of like the discipline you take to do something up front, prepares you to do it so much faster and so much more efficiently later on. And so it all adds up. It really does build on each other. You just, again, have to be disciplined to do it on your own, because it's not high school where people are holding your hand and there's a test and a grade at the end of it. It's not about that anymore. It's about doing it for yourself and doing it for your client or your team or whoever it may be.
That's great.
Mary Elizabeth, I have one more question for you for this interview. Do you have any memorable anecdotes or any stories that from your time in the program, whether at Furman or whether at the Miami Ad School, that you'd like to share?
Should we leave?
No, I'm not that type of student. I wish I was someone with crazy stories. I mean, I think something that just was consistent throughout Furman and Miami Ad School was I had a lot of family support, and that involved a lot of tailgates at Furman family tailgates at the football games, things like that. I mean, and I loved it because when I graduated from Miami Ad School, and Hank, I don't know if you remember, but my family tailgated my graduation from Miami Ad School. They were there hours before, just sitting in the parking lot with food, came in, saw my portfolio. You had a long time to kind of be there showing your portfolio to people. And so once they went out, kept tailgating, came in for graduation, and then we celebrated me afterwards in the parking lot. And I don't know, it was just kind of fun that it felt like, the tailgates from Furman continued all the way through Miami Ad School.
Yeah,
so
that's really special. I didn't realize that. That just shows you kind of the family nature that we have in the program.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Even your immediate family feel like that they're a part of, what we're all about here. That's a great story.
Yeah.
That was a great little send off, and it sounds like a great little launch to your own career as you began your foray into being a designer and now as an art director, where you're at now. So that's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary Elizabeth. It was great having you. Ross, Hank, thanks again for you two joining us, and we'll see everybody next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.